Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of Our Stars and Stripes and Maple Syrup. This week we have Baltimore, Maryland's very own Andy Cooke. Andy, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, good evening. How you doing?
Good, thank you. So for he said good evening. It's Sunday evening here in the US. We watched the match yesterday. Well, to be honest, I was out playing golf, so I watched it today. And as I was just saying to Andy, there's nothing more boring than watching a game that you know is going to end 0-0 and that you should have scored a bucket load of goals in. But before we get to the game, Andy, tell us a little bit about yourself. Obviously, I think you're the only Sunderland fan in Maryland. I know you've got the girls with you there, but
No, there's a few of us. My history is trying to tell a very long story short. My family come from Seaham Harbour in County Durham. I'm not originally from there myself. I was born in the northwest in Chester, and we used to live in the Wirral in Chester, and then grew up down south in the Thames Valley, kind of halfway between Oxford and Reading. So I'm like a second generation supporter, but twice removed because I was an exile to start with, and then I married an American, and we moved. Many years later, we moved to the US, and I got work just outside Baltimore in 2007. So we've been here since 2007. The NASA rep for the Maryland, but more like the Baltimore area. And we've got a few locals in the group. So back in the before times, we used to meet up. When we were in the Premier League, we used to be able to go to the pub. There's a good Irish pub downtown Baltimore called Slancher. In fact, that's our recruit, a couple of guys who we met down there when we used to go and watch. So there's a few of us in the area, but we haven't got together for 2 years or whatever. But we're talking about maybe having a meet up sometime soon. So I got part of my flag up for the I busted that out for the podcast. So that's kind of where I'm from. Yes, there are a few of us around. I think there's more, to be fair, there's more Sunderland fans down in the Washington area, Northern Virginia and the DC suburbs, but that's where I'm from, where I am now. And
well, maybe if we get to the playoff final, we can have a get together.
Yeah.
I'll drive up for that definitely. Baltimore's not too far for me.
Yeah, we in fact, probably that's the last couple of ones we did, playoff final and the Portsmouth final. I mean, I can't even tell you how long those were ago, but that's the last time we had a major meetup. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, if we get to the playoff final, then
well, keep me in the loop. I will definitely be there. All right, cool. So let's touch upon yesterday's game. As I said, I watched it today after the F1, so it wasn't the most scintillating of afternoons that I've had.
Yeah, it was. Well, I mean, actually, for 0-0, admittedly, I listened to it on the radio and then I watched the highlights today. It was quite exciting, and the first half was really good. But it can be frustrating if we don't take any of those chances. And Jack Clark in particular, he had a lot of chances and he just kept pulling them past the post. And the other thing is, Stewart doesn't seem to be getting on the end of a lot of those chances either. So it's falling to our wingers and midfielders to try and create, but also put them away. So it's kind of weird.
The reason that Stewart's not getting on them is he seems to be coming really deep to support play going forward.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing was Lincoln had a lot of bodies in the box as well. So even when he got into the box, he's got one or two guys man marking him, pulling his shirt a lot as well.
I mean, Jermaine Defoe's found that since he's came back that he's not going to get any space. He's going to get kicked at the height a lot. So
yeah,
you think Stewart would be used to it by now after a full season in the trenches?
Yeah. I don't know if it's just it's a feature of since Alex Neil's come in. We've got this weird pattern of playing really well and scoring no goals, or playing really badly and getting a couple. And it's obviously not by design, but it seems to alternate between those two. And again, Stewart doesn't seem to get much of a look in either way. So I don't know. It's interesting times, but like Alex Neil said on a few occasions, he doesn't really care how we play as long as we can find a way to win. But I don't know. It was a funny game yesterday. It was quite for 0-0. It was actually a pretty good game.
No, I mean it was entertaining, but I don't want to be entertained at this stage of the season. I mean, we're 38, 39 games in. We've got 7 games left this season. So 21 points to play for.
Yes, if this was early in the season or even mid-season, you might say, this is promising. We played really well. Okay, maybe it's a couple of points dropped. Right now, Sheffield Wednesday are really breathing down our necks, and I think they've got a game in hand. So we're on the verge of screwing it up and not making the playoffs.
Yeah, but Sheffield have been equally as inconsistent.
Yeah.
They've drawn 2, won 2, and lost 1. They lost against Lincoln. They got beat against Lincoln, but then turned Burton 5-2 yesterday.
So that's maybe the only thing that we can perhaps cling to at the moment is the fact that some of the other teams are inconsistent. I mean, not Wigan, not MK Dons. I mean, from the playoff teams, MK Dons are on fire. And you know, the goal at the moment is just to make it to the playoffs.
Yeah,
but
I don't care how we get in there, whether the ball's got to bounce off. Even if Corry Evans has to score a hat-trick every week between now and the end of the season, I'll take it.
Yeah. Actually, Evans had a couple of decent chances.
Yeah, he dragged one wide and it looked as though it was going to be easier. He hit the post, I think.
Yeah.
It looked easier to score.
Yeah.
I wasn't criticizing for that, though, because at least he was in the right position.
Yeah, I don't expect him normally to be popping up in the box. So I don't know if that's a good thing or not. Normally, the less said about Evans, the better. But actually,
I just don't expect when it comes to Evans. I find that if you have no expectations, it's more difficult for him to fail to live up to them.
Right.
Well, I mean, look, the positives. Another clean sheet for Patterson in the defence.
They were not really troubled at all. I mean, I like it. I like Bailey Wright when he's playing because he wins pretty much anything in the air that's coming straight down his throat. And then Patterson made that save right at the end. We could have easily lost 1-0 to that really late chance that they had.
Yeah.
And it's hard to tell what they're doing better because earlier in the season, any team that was strong down the wings, like when we got thrashed by Rotherham, when we got beat by Sheffield Wednesday, maybe the Portsmouth as well. If you could start shelling the ball in to our 18-yard box, we couldn't cope with it. Now, I don't know if it's playing 3 at the back that does it, albeit with only one recognised centre-back starting. I honestly don't know what Alex Neil's done. I can't see it, but something's working.
Yeah, I mean, this 3-5-2 formation, I don't understand it, if I'm perfectly honest. I know it has the flexibility of being a 3-4-3, but you've got... I mean, yesterday it looked as though he started with Roberts playing up with Stewart.
Yeah.
You know, Stewart's had all of his success this season of being the lone striker, but okay. Roberts was probably the brightest spark in the entire team yesterday.
Definitely. And I mean, he's got a free role. He's not playing as a striker as much as probably a number 10, you know, the Alex Pritchard kind of role. Just go and do whatever you want. Go out to the wings if you have to, which maybe suits him. Him and Clark have both been very productive the last couple of
they've looked great, running down the left and right wings and then cutting back in. It's been great. But the problem is they haven't been finding Stewart, and their last balls
right.
the greatest.
Yeah, and again, I don't know, you know, obviously we don't know what Neil is coaching them to do. It doesn't look like they're looking for Stewart particularly. They look like they just get in the box and then get a shot away. Which might be frustrating if they are wingers and they don't have such a good eye for hitting the target. But on another day, they could have easily got, you know, at least a couple of goals yesterday. So I don't know.
I mean, we bossed possession, we bossed shots, we bossed shots on target. It was one-way traffic for the most part. I think I only remember towards the end where Patterson had to pull out a pretty decent save.
Right.
And again, I think Maguire saved his best performance for us again. I thought he was lively without looking as dangerous as he did against us at the Stadium of Life.
No, I mean, that was a ridiculous performance at the home match. And Maguire is he is going to be the way he is. You've got to kind of just let him do his thing and not try and get wound up. I don't think he was doing too much to get our players going, but Lincoln didn't look like much though. They didn't have much going for them. It's funny because those two matches where we've played well and not scored are both away from home at Charlton and Lincoln, and I don't know if it's a thing when we're playing teams away from home. Like you say, the next match is home against Gillingham, and they're just above the relegation places. So you think, oh, that's a good opportunity to have a go at a team. But
yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the table, I think Lincoln are the last team that really don't have much to worry about for the rest of the season. They're 12 points clear of the relegation zone. And they don't look as though they're going to drop 12 points more than the likes of your Doncasters and your Morecambes. So you've got Fleetwood and Gillingham, who are just a point above the relegation zone. Gillingham are going to come fighting for their lives when they come to us next week, in 2 weeks' time.
Yeah, it's interesting. Actually, I hadn't realised Lincoln, Fleetwood, Gillingham. Yeah, I'm just looking at the table now. They're next to each other. Yes, Gillingham have definitely got more to play for. The teams like Doncaster and Crewe, all they can do is kind of just defend in numbers and hope for a draw.
Yeah, I mean, Crewe are down. They're what, 9 points adrift of Gillingham. They're not going to make that up in 6 games, 7 games. Yeah. So I think Crewe you can count as down. I think Doncaster is good as. I mean, they're still 4 points. I mean, they could put in a run, but they haven't looked like it this season. So I think you're looking at much the same way with the playoffs at the top of the table, where it could be 2 teams from 4. I think you're looking at Fleetwood, Gillingham, Wimbledon, and Morecambe. From those who go down. So
if that means Gillingham have to come play, then maybe that gives us a chance to get into them a little more. It's difficult breaking down teams, and I've got no problem with teams parking the bus. People often complain, well, the team came and parked the bus. Well, what do you want them to do? Play expansively and get thrashed 5-0? I mean, they've got the right to play in any way they want to.
Yeah, I mean, we did it plenty of times when we win the Premier League.
Yeah. So
hit deep and hit teams on the break.
Yeah. So I don't know. It's funny. Alex Neil is an interesting character. I listened to that club podcast this week, the SAFC Unfiltered.
I haven't got around to that yet.
And if anybody hasn't listened to it, I'd definitely listen to that one with Alex Neil. He's a very interesting character. He's very straightforward. Doesn't really care what people think about the team or how they play, or he doesn't have a set system. He picks them week to week based on the opposition. So it's very difficult to know what he's going to do from week to week and predict even what the team will be. He does seem sort of settled on that 3-5-2, but then he'll make oddball decisions like Matete was dropped. Now, I haven't looked at the timing of it, but there's rumours that it's because he's on that yellow card deadline.
Yeah, I think if you picked up a booking yesterday, that had a 2-game ban. But I think yesterday was the last game before it kind of wiped out.
So the interesting thing is you got 2 weeks off. Don't know who's, I mean, I assume he'll probably start with a 3-5-2, but you don't know, and you really don't know who's going to be picked. I mean, in the midfield, Evans keeps getting, and I don't want to go on about Evans. I know a lot of people don't like him, but you would think Matete, 09, Neil
would be our best 3 midfield.
Yeah. In any combination, while Pritchard is out. If Pritchard's in, then he has to play as kind of a central number 10 with 2 behind him, but maybe he'll be back. I mean, it's 2 weeks, so I don't know how far away he is.
Yeah, I mean, I know that they're saying that the injury wasn't as bad as they'd anticipated with Pritchard, but I don't know how bad it is. Has the club given so what I'm looking for, a timescale for his return?
Yeah, I don't remember. But anyway, given the amount of criticism that Evans gets, I'm surprised that he's making it in the 3 in the middle.
Yeah, there's just, So I think when you look at that three in the middle, you've got three good plotters. Now, look, I know it's hard to call Daniel a plotter because he does have a little bit of a creative spark and is able to get forward. Similar with 09, but they're first and foremost holding midfield players, defensive midfield players who are going to keep you tight at the back before they get forward. Now, for me, it would have been okay, you sacrifice Evans because he's blatantly crap. You put in Ambleton, and then you have O'Neill and you have O9 and Neil as your holding midfield players. You have Ambleton playing ahead of them, but behind the two strikers. And then you have, would have been Gooch playing out wide right, and then you have Clark out wide left. And now you're looking at a different shape. Again, I like Gooch's performance yesterday. I like the way he harries. I do like to see him play like that. My only wish for Gooch is that he'd stop running down dead end streets.
Yeah, you would think that kind of thing, that's the mark of a good coach, is someone who can coach that, because the technical ability is what the players have, and the physical ability you can improve on in terms of fitness, and you should be able to coach certain traits out of them. It's surprising, a lot of people don't like the way that Gooch plays, but when we do well, it tends to be when he's doing well.
Yeah. The upturn in form coincided with the Gooch's return from injury.
But he works hard as well, and in a 3-5-2, you do lack a bit of defensive support because you only have wing backs. In a 4 at the back, you've got like doubled up. You've got fullbacks and wing backs, but you've got these two guys by themselves. They've got to make it up and down the wing by themselves. You know, maybe the wide centre backs come out and help, but maybe it's Gooch is a bit like 09. Like technically, not, you know, you would always prefer someone like Dan Neil or Embleton to be playing rather than 09, but they cover a lot of grass.
Yeah, if you could smush a Dan Neil and an 09 together and an Embleton and Gooch together, you'd have two pretty decent players.
Yeah.
Although knowing some of us like to take the worst of both traits, and that's what would come third.
Yeah.
So, I mean, again, positives from yesterday. We had a clean sheet for Patterson. I'm not a fan of the three at the back, especially when you're only playing one recognised centre defender. But I understand that Doyle has needed the rest. Arby's just come back from a long term out, so he's probably a little bit stiff, a little bit probably not match fit the way that he'd want to be. And I'd much rather him be sprightly and ready for the playoffs should we get there in May than be on the sidelines for that. You know, like I said, I don't understand the Evans at the club or at all, but I'll try not to breathe on too much about that one. And I said it last week, and I've said it since before he signed back for us. I think the 4 was a mistake. I don't see him scoring for Sunderland in this visit.
No, I honestly don't know why they signed him. I mean, he would have been perfect a couple of seasons ago and wouldn't have been available. But when we sold, who was it, Maja? We needed, you know, when we needed a striker who can put the ball away when it's played to his feet in the box, Defoe would be perfect. As a second striker to play with Stewart, forget it. Or even as a replacement for Stewart. Arguably, not my opinion, but everybody says Stewart's arguably the best striker in the league. So why would we want to? And it's clear we're not going to pull him out and start Defoe. So I honestly don't know why they signed Defoe. Given the recruitment team, and I support what they do. They've got all these data analysts. They're trying to do things through automated means of crunching all the data, and they come up with Defoe.
No, I don't.
It's a PR exercise. I think.
You know what? If they'd had shirts in stock at the club shop, I would have said it was just a money machine, a way to sell shirts with his name on the back. But given that we're out of stock in most of the sizes, and there's no more coming in, can't really claim that one. I can't imagine there was any point during the recruitment meeting where, like, you know what? He's 40 years old. He hasn't played much in the last year. He's great for us.
Yeah.
I know Speakman gets a lot of grief for the club's recruitment, but he's only one of a number of people involved in that. And I'm 100% behind the data gathering. If you look at, was it Billy Bean with the Anaheim now, but the Angels,
Right.
and what he was able to do by looking at numbers and looking at what you need, as opposed to looking at players and what they can bring. I definitely think there's a way to look at teams, the makeup of a team, a lot more analytically than they have in the past. But I think we must have our recruitment drive still working on DOS, and it needs a Windows update.
Yeah, I think Defoe's going to have some role to play, but then when you've got players like Roberts coming on as a sub last week and as a starter this week, and being the star of the show, then there isn't enough room on the pitch for two strikers, and I mean we've got 2-3 decent wingers as well. I mean, anyway,
we've got a squad of wingers. I mean, if you think about this, if we could have everyone fit by the time the playoffs start, you'd have the option of Clark and McGeady out left. You'd have Gooch, Roberts out right, Pritchard in the middle. You have Defoe and Stewart up front, and then you've got Neil, Embleton on 9.
yeah,
I'm missing someone. I can't think of who it is. On Diaco.
Diaco, yeah. I mean, there's a danger with the way that Alex Neil is playing. Like he said, he doesn't have a fixed system. He doesn't have a fixed number. He must have 1 or 2 players that are first on the team sheet. It's got to be Stewart for a start. But I would have said up until yesterday it would be Matete as well. But he there's a danger that going into the playoffs, all of those other players come back, then there's no partnerships on the pitch, right? If you pick like some whatever, the de facto kind of starting formation these days is probably a 4-2-3-1. So you've got wingers and fullbacks on one side of the pitch, and you would want everybody to start building relationships down each side. The central midfielders, the fullbacks, the wingers, and then the more central number 10 and the number 9s. We don't have any of that. So there's a danger. It sounds like counterintuitive, but there's a danger that all of those players are back. We go into the playoffs. What the hell is the system? And who's going to play in the team? And McGeady's hot and cold. He can be brilliant, but he can also be a waste of time because you give the ball to him and he tries to win the match every time you give him the ball, and it goes nowhere. Well, obviously that's Alex Neil's problem, but
yeah, but if it means we're going to be watching another season of League One football, it's our problem as well.
Yeah. And I think the other thing to remember with the playoffs is this stage of the season, the goal is just to get into the playoffs. But then you've got to win. You've got to guarantee you can win 2 out of 3 matches at a minimum. And which team's on fire? MK Dons. If we don't think we can beat them, and last time we played them we couldn't, then we ain't going to be getting anywhere. All other things being equal, you've got a 1 in 4 chance. But then depending on how good you are, well, if we're scraping in at number 6 out of the 4 positions, then we are unlikely to be on any kind of a roll.
So I think Sunderland have only ever been promoted to the playoffs once in their history.
And was that when we lost to Swindon?
That's when we lost to Swindon in the final, and we finished 6th that season.
Yeah. I went to that final.
Yeah, I was there for that one as well. Couldn't get tickets to the Newcastle games, but I got tickets to the final.
Yeah. So anyway, I'm not trying to be a downer on the playoffs. I do hate the playoffs. Are a great spectacle for neutral, but they're terrible for anybody involved with one.
Awful to be in.
Yeah. So the current feeling is I think Alex Neil is an upgrade on Lee Johnson. He talks a lot playing out. I didn't mind Lee Johnson's kind of management speak. At least it showed he had something about him, unlike Phil Parkinson, who just like.
I thought Johnson got an unfair crack because he's using terminology. He's talking about acronyms that most people haven't heard of outside of coaching circles. So when you start mentioning poor motor guys who aren't who watch Match of the Day or they watch Sky Sports and that's what they know. Like
Yeah.
Gary Neville's not talking about promo, but from a coaching perspective, it's very much what Lee Johnson was about. It's like position of maximum opportunity. So
Yeah. So I never had a problem with him. It's only a subjective opinion. I think Alex Neil seems to be an upgrade. He talks a bit plainer. He has a bit more direct attitude towards, it's not about the system and the process. It's just about doing what you have to do on an individual game. And maybe that's good for the playoffs, because that's what you have to do for the playoffs, is guarantee you can find a way to win those games.
Maybe I'm being a little bit harsh, and maybe it is a good thing for someone, because if you don't know what formation we're going to play, then it's harder to prepare.
Yeah.
Not that it seems hard for teams like Lincoln and Charlton to prepare, but when you put 11 men behind the ball for 90 minutes, you're going to have an easier time of things. But when it gets to the playoffs, I don't think you're going to see MK Dons or Oxford sitting behind the ball. I think they're going to realize that they've got to go for the win, because they understand that. I think whether it's MK Dons, Plymouth, Oxford, or Sunderland, who end up there, even Sheffield, I think all those teams are capable of turning each other over.
Yeah.
And so you're not going to want to sit behind the ball and defend and hope you can get a goal on your home leg. You're going to have to play for 2 wins. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, as long as Wycombe don't get to the playoffs and we have to play flipping Wycombe.
3-3 at their place. We beat them in ours, I think. Did we beat Wycombe at home?
I don't remember, actually. I remember the 3-3, that was recently, but
yeah, it's the game that changed that season.
Yeah.
Butchers.
I mean, if anything, if they did make it into the playoffs, they would make it at our expense. I mean, really, it's Wycombe, Sheffield.
Actually, have you seen the end of the teams around us have awful run-ins.
Well, that's the other thing. I haven't done that. And interestingly enough, that's another thing that Alex Neil was saying. They asked him on that podcast, do you start looking at those combinations and seeing who's playing who and taking point? He's like, I don't care. Just focus on our own game, which is an interesting thing for a coach to say. But for us, that's a good point. If they're starting to play each other, yeah, brilliant. They can all draw 0-0 against each other, 1-1 against each other, and
yeah. I mean, I did the obligatory end of season prediction.
Yeah.
Match teams against scores. I'm already out because I had us beating Lincoln. But I noticed how many times you had like Sheffield and Wycombe playing, or Plymouth and Oxford, or Oxford and MK Dons.
Right.
They're all playing each other. And I think we've only got, if you look at the end of the season running, we've only really got, Rotherham rearranged, Plymouth and Oxford. Other than that, Gillingham, Shrewsbury, Cambridge, Morecambe will be down by then. So Plymouth, Oxford and Rotherham. And so 4 easier games, 3 hard ones. I think Rotherham might be champions by the time April 26th comes around, because I've seen how tough a schedule Wigan have got. And then Plymouth and Oxford, if we can beat those, although they're both away games, so it's tough. I'd hope for 21 points from the last 7 games. I'd be happy with 15 from the last 6.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's gonna be an interesting end to the season, which sucks as a Sunderland fan.
I mean, again, that's the thing, is making the playoffs is the bare minimum at this point.
All right, so let's say we don't make the playoffs. Do you give Alex Neil the start of the season?
Oh yeah, definitely. If we can pay his wages, he's definitely a championship level or above, manager. He could easily go back to a club the likes of Norwich City, where he previously managed. So I'd keep him. It's funny because a lot of the time you hear coaches talking about not wanting to drop down to a certain division. Well, what they might euphemistically mean is they're not willing to take the pay cut. So as long as we can pay Neil's wages in League One, I'd want him to stay. The question is, how many of those players that we currently have either on loan or permanent can we keep? Because we haven't really, again, we're underperforming. It's a very strong squad. Can we keep Stewart?
Stewart might be the hardest one to keep.
You know,
because he's got 21 goals in the league this season.
Yeah.
He's going to have clubs sniffing around him. I think we could probably get Clark back on another season loan. He doesn't seem to be lighting it up at championship level, which he should be at his ability. Roberts was a signing to the end of the season, if I remember right. And if he played well, he'd go and earn himself a contract. I think O'Neill, Evans, Pritchard, Embleton and Neil are all more than 1 year contracts left. Doyle was a 2-year loan deal. Serkin is a long-term signing. So
Yeah.
a lot of this club is coming, a lot of this team is coming back. It's like the supplementary players like Diaku. It's probably not done enough to earn himself a permanent role. I think that the emergence of Patterson is probably saying we probably don't need to sign Hoffman full time. I mean, you can let Burge go and then bring in another keeper.
Yeah.
As much as I wanted to see Willis come back, I don't know whether it's worth keep paying him to sit on the sideline and do opposition report.
Yeah.
But I definitely get Group signed up to another season.
Yeah. So when you put it like that, Stewart is the big one that we might struggle to keep. But there's the bones of a decent side, and you listen to like the pre-match podcasts with Lincoln supporters, and you know they've had a major drop off since the making it the playoff final last season, and a lot of it's to do with sell your best players and not replace them. And in League One, you've got to sell the decent players, but you need to be backfilling them with, like Stewart came in before the end of last season because we knew we had to replace White. And you know, people are different opinions about White, you know, but it was good to get that replacement in early. So if we can keep the bones of that squad together, you'd think we'd have a good chance. But then I don't know, you don't know what the other teams are going to do in terms of developing their squads or who's coming down.
Well,
I mean, Derby are going to come down from the championship probably. Rotherham came down last season and are probably playing at the standard of a lower level championship team. So that takes one, you know, who knows what will happen to Derby with in terms of their players. But
I mean, Derby are not a relegation team. That's the problem. You give them that 21 points back, and they're the bottom end of mid-table, but they're mid-table.
Right. So if they can keep their players, same thing. If they can afford to pay their players now, given that the whole thing was financial problems in the first place, I don't know. But say they keep the players, then yeah, you'd say they're almost certainly favourites to go back up again.
So then you've got to spend money on proven championship players. And look, I know that we've brought in players, but we haven't spent any money.
And I don't think we're going to. I think people probably don't like this, but the fact that our owner is a billionaire is neither here nor there. He's actually trying to run the club as a sustainable business with some investment from the investment group. And without getting into who those people are, you're only talking about probably a few £1 million being invested per season by that group for players. A lot of people get hung up on the fact that the owner himself, KLD, is a billionaire. He's not going to bankroll the club the same way as did. So, and it's funny because you got this, you know, the whole situation going on with Chelsea, Newcastle and their ownership group. People want to be bought up by these wealthy billionaires who just pump unsustainable sums of money into the football clubs. When it happens to you, it's great, and when it happens to someone else, it's bad. It's kind of a silly thing. So I don't know what to think of it really, but I think the reality of it is in League One, KLD is not going to be pumping more than a few £1 million, dollars, however you want to put it, into the club. So that's probably where the data-driven recruitment has to come from, which is picking up players that are off the radar of other teams that have some value.
And yeah, we've done pretty well at that this season. I mean, he didn't look great at the start of the season, did Pritchard, but since he's got his running the team, he's got his match fitness, he's been a difference maker for us.
And sorry, just to jump in with Pritchard, I'm pretty sure I heard an interview with Speakman, and he said we had to buy him at the time, because if you'd have let him go at that point and he got fit, been playing for another club, you would not have picked him up. So it's not just identifying the players, it's getting them when they get the chance. Probably the same thing with Stewart as well. A lot of people were surprised. They're like, well, who's replacing Wyke? We've already got Stewart. He's not the replacement. No, Stewart is the replacement. So they're going in and they're grabbing the players when they can get them. It's not just how much they cost, it's when they get the opportunity.
And I like that. I like the fact that somebody in the club has an idea of what they're doing. Like I haven't seen a coherent transfer window or something. I think with the exception of Sam Allardyce, who knew what we needed and brought in what he saw that we needed. Like you look at well, Moyes was admittedly a disaster, but you look at the managers before him. Poya never really seemed to know what he wanted. And yeah, Dick Advocat, who again seemed clueless when it came to recruitment.
Well, that's another facet of the way the club has been run. Again, some people won't like it, but I like separating the recruitment from the head coach. And they call him specifically head coach because it's not a manager. So your recruitment keeps going on. And it doesn't mean we have to keep Speakman either. It just means that there is a recruitment department that operates semi-independently of the manager or the coach. And you can keep recycling through coaches, but it doesn't scrap the whole recruitment. It doesn't.
No, and I think that was the big thing when KLD came on board, and when I know the Mad Rocks Mafia were the ones who brought Speakman in officially. But the thing that made the most sense to me about bringing in Speakman was, look, we want to create a club where we have an identity of the way we play. Now, I haven't worked out what that identity is yet. But I like the theory of it doesn't matter who the manager is, this style of play is going to suit the players that we've already got in the club.
Yeah.
Because I think you look at the replacement of Martin O'Neill, of Steve Bruce, of Poya, of Di Canio, of Advocat, of Moyes. None of those players, with the exception of maybe Allardyce into Moyes, none of those managers really played the same way.
Right.
They all had their own style, their own way, their own type of player that they liked. And as a result, we end up having to rip up the playbook every season. So it's the theory of having a manager who will coach the same way, if not the same coaching methods, but his way of playing is similar enough where changing manager doesn't make a disruption, then fingers crossed. I mean, you see it in American sports all the time, where you have certain NFL teams who play West Coast offense or however they play the nickel formation, and you know that it doesn't matter who your head coach is coming in. You know that that's going to be the kind of coach who's going to play that kind of ball to be able to continue the success or the way that those teams are playing.
Yeah. So, we got onto recruitment because you're asking what happens if we stay in League One. I mean, obviously there's three possibilities. We don't make the playoffs. We do make the playoffs, but don't go through them. That's probably the most likely scenario. Or we make it to the playoffs and make the way through the playoffs and get promoted. I think making the playoffs might get people's hopes up a little too much. It's not wanting to kind of go around in circles a lot on that, but it's not that easy. You got a 1 in 4 chance, but it's only 1 in 4 if you're on equal terms with the other teams. You might have less than 1 in 4 if the other teams are on fire and have momentum, whatever that means, but are on a good winning streak. So worst case scenario, you would say, is not making the playoffs, but making the playoffs and not winning the playoffs is
But just
not much inside.
look how dejected some of the fans are when we went out to Lincoln.
Yeah. So, I mean, the outcome is still the same, but
I mean, look, so far we've made the playoffs and not got through twice.
yeah.
So we've made the final, not won. We've got knocked out during the group stages. We've not made the playoffs. That's the 3 seasons that we've had. So 4th season has to be now makes the playoffs and go up. Just by process of elimination.
Yeah. I mean, really the target each year has to be top 2.
Yeah.
Again, it kind of depends on who's coming down from the championship as well. You know, like we say, if Derby come down and they can still afford their players, then you would almost certainly think they've got one of those 2 places. Now you've got the whole of the rest of the division fighting for one other automatic, because the playoffs are a crapshoot. You could even be in the position that MK Dons are in right now, or Plymouth, who I think their form looks a little better over the past, whatever it is, 5 matches. And even they might not make it through. And then you're like, well, what's the point of that? And the teams that fall by from the playoffs, Oxford are a good example. They're in and around the playoffs, actually Wickham as well, every year. They have these runs where they're a little patchy at times. They're not good enough to be consistent enough throughout the whole season to make it to automatic. And they make it to the playoffs, or just about every single year. And that's fine for a team the size of, a club the size of Oxford or Wickham.
So let's look at those teams who are around the bottom of the championship right now.
Yeah.
So I think Hull in 20th are probably safe. They're 13 points clear of Barnsley, who are in 22nd. So it's going to be 3 from 4. And you have Derby, Peterborough, Barnsley, and Reading. Now, arguably, Sunderland are bigger than 3 of those 4 clubs. I think only Derby could have a claim to being a bigger club, given their history, especially with European trophies. But I think Peterborough have been up and around the top of the League One most of the seasons we've been there. Reading would be a big fish to come down because they've been in the championship forever.
Reading are in desperate financial circumstances. They have been overspending on wages beyond their income for years and years and years. They are probably the next basket case.
So you could see them starting with negative points next season, then, could they?
Or having some, fighting to avoid administration, going into administration, having to sell all their players. They're the next basket case after Derby in the championship. So if they got relegated, they could be in all kinds of trouble.
So I think, look, I would love nothing more than to see Derby survive. If for no other reason than I felt bad for them, I think Rooney's done a phenomenal job. But I think if they go down, he's definitely moving on to better things. He's managed them admirably this year. I mean, they're at a -7 goal difference, which is great for them. They'd have 46 points right now and be safe as houses if it wasn't for the 21-point deduction. So I think you're looking at Derby and Peterborough definitely. Reading there's a 5-point gap between Reading and Barnsley. I think Reading might just hang on for the last 7 games of the season and stay up. But it'll be interesting who comes down.
Yeah, and you think of Peterborough as being a bit of they're like a yo-yo League One Championship kind of level as well. So again, without knowing what they're, do they have long-term recruitment? Do they have players signed up? Are they just going to dump everybody when they get relegated? It's hard to know.
They started dumping players in January, like Siriki Dembele.
Yeah,
he's been a phenomenal player for them last couple of seasons. Always a guy that I pick up when I'm playing Football Manager. But they got rid of him in the January window, whether his contract was coming up or the offer they had was just too good to turn down. But I was shocked to see him leaving them. Maybe with the struggles he has for the move, but
yeah.
Next season is definitely going to be an interesting one. I'd rather be playing championship teams, but I got a feeling now we'll be where we are now.
I mean, on the balance of probabilities, given that those, that's the 3 options are: don't make the playoffs and fail, make the playoffs and succeed. on that balance of probabilities, you'd think we are not going to, even though we're you know, everybody's going to be, at least if we make the playoffs this season, fans are going to be up for it, but that doesn't mean anything. It's not going to actually affect how the team plays necessarily. I'm an eternal pessimist anyway, so you know, you kind of got to set your expectations.
Traditionally, I've always been the pessimist.
Yeah.
We're 6-0 at home, the opposition are down to 8 men, there's 5 minutes left, and I'm praying that we can come for a draw.
Yeah.
That's been me for 45 years.
Yeah.
But for some reason, this last season and a half, I don't know, that's just something in my head that's just like, look at the bright side, look to the positive.
Yeah, I think the positives are, irrespective of what happens this season, I think Alex Neil is a good manager for a team at this level. And if we were in the championship, a good starting position to start with. And we do, like, you know, you're running through the players. We do have some players, many of whom, you know, if they're on at least another year or two contract, many of whom are probably playing below, like Dan Neil, definitely playing the championship, and with the right coaching, you know, he could make it to a Premier League team. So the pessimist in me says, whatever happens, we ain't getting promoted. The optimist says, but we've got a good base to start next season with Alex Neil, with a good core group of young players. Maybe we need some more experience, but if Pritchard is still there, replace Evans with someone experienced in the middle.
I mean, we could just take Johnny Evans as shin pads. They'd be about as useful.
Yeah. So you know, pessimist, optimist. I think you would think we would do okay next season, but I mean, you don't know. The bigger problem that the club has is, can they pay the bills that they have and maintain like the academy at the level that it's at, being a League One club, given that the owner is clearly not going to be pumping infinite amounts of money into the club. That's the danger. Is you can stay in League One forever if you can, you know, if you're Fleetwood or Oxford or Accrington, if you can cover your costs, you're okay.
I think the owner's prepared to pump in the money needed to keep the club running.
Right.
I'm talking the obviously the ownership group as it is at the moment.
Right.
I don't see an issue where he's not going to want to put the money in to protect his investment, and I think he's wise enough, and skilled enough to know that the academy is quite possibly our best way of bringing the club on without huge amount of investment from a purchase perspective.
Right.
I mean, okay, Dan Neil's come through recently, Maja, Asoro, and then you've got older players like the Jordans who came through, like Colback who came through the academy. I think that the academy is starting to bear fruit. Yeah, okay, look, the Madrox Mafia kind of gutted the some of it, which was unfortunate. But I think long term, I think the academy is the way forward. I think there may be a big shake-up over the next couple of years in football financing, especially in the UK with this whole billionaire stuff. But I'd like to think that our billionaire has enough common sense to be able to spend a few pennies, which is what it is to him, obviously, compared to us, keeping the club. Because I think if you can get that club into the Premier League, and you can turn it around for a ridiculous amount of money.
The problem is actually the championship. Again, there are these basket case clubs that have been overspending, and they've been doing a lot of stuff to not fiddle the books, but to make their financial fair play numbers. They've been selling their own grounds to themselves.
That's what Derby got in trouble for the first time.
Derby got in trouble for it. Sheffield they got in trouble. I think they got away with it. Sheffield Wednesday did it. Maybe Reading, I don't know. But the sums of money that are being spent in the Championship to try and get to the Premier League, to be honest, for the time being, I think most Sunderland fans would just be happy with get out of League One and then knock about in the Championship for a while, but not do that crazy spending of hundreds and hundreds of millions of pounds just to fail to get. You've got to do it the way a lot of these teams have, by building up slowly. You know, Sheffield United, although they came back down, Wolves, Brentford, you know.
Brentford have been a good model to follow because
Yeah,
they've invested in players that most people aren't looking at, like Yesaya Ben Ramos, and they're able to get the most out of them for a season or two, where the bigger clubs come in looking, and you get 30 or 40 million for a player you spend 3 or 4.
yeah. I think I'd like to think that our owner is astute enough that we have the things that he's putting in place appear to be along the lines of, although I think there was a bit of a scramble when sacking Johnson and replacing him with Alex Neil. But Southampton's another example, especially when it comes to the head coach and also buying the players. We seem to be moving in that direction where we've separated the recruitment. We always seem to be able to replace a head coach with someone who are equal or better, and we're bringing in a lot of young players from on loan who get straight into the first team, do well, and then the danger is, talk about Brentford, you have to sell sometimes to move on. Like Dan Neil's going to have Dan Neil, Ross Stewart are going to have prices on their heads. But if you make it to the Championship, then maybe that's fair do. So I think we're heading in the right direction, but you've got to get to the Championship first before any of that kind of Southampton, Brentford model comes to fruition. So,
all right. Well, listen, it's been a pleasure having you on.
Yep.
We've gone a little bit longer today, but we're not quite finished yet. Obviously, anyone who's been watching us over the last couple of weeks has noticed that we've been doing a prediction bet. Obviously, we were supposed to have Andy on next week for Rotherham, but Graham had a better option of spending time with his grandson today. So Andy very kindly stepped in today. The Rotherham game is now not a Saturday game, so we're not going to do a prediction on that one. I think the next one we said was Gillingham a week on Saturday at home.
Yeah.
So I don't have the odds available for that game just yet. Normally they come out just before. So we'll just take your score prediction for that one this time.
Well, Gillingham at home, despite being a pessimist, I'll say 2-0 win.
Okay, so I will jot that down. Okay, I was going to go 2-0 as well. Well, let's make a difference so that let's go 3-0 Sunderland.
All right.
So we'll update the description in the YouTube bit down here, so that by the time the match comes on, we'll have the odds in. Obviously, any money that we win through the rest of the season is going to get donated out to the Bradley Lowry Foundation. So far, they're in line for 100 quid, which is better than kicking the tits. But Andy, listen, thank you very much for coming on. Like I said, if we get to a playoff final, give me a shout. I'm happy to come up to Baltimore and watch some football up there. But guys, thank you very much for joining us again this week. We are back for the Gillingham game, and we have Jose from New York who'll be coming and joining us for that game. But Andy, thank you very much for joining us tonight. See you all real soon.
Yep. Cheers, Gav.